Welcome to the Aiki Dojo Podcast. I am David Ito, Chief Instructor of the Aikido Center of Los Angeles. And with me is...
Glennyoshida from Aikido Renshinkan, Hawaii.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Today I thought we would talk about, is Aikido self-defense?
Okay, that's we go from there. Is Aikido self-defense? Well, it can be used to defend yourself. The techniques can be applied to defending yourself when necessary. But if you pose the question of, is it self-defense? The answer is no. Aikido is budo. And that is not self-defense. Budo is its own category of art.
Because in Fu Sensei's old dojo, the sign outside said, Aikido, Arts of Self-Defense.
Yes, that's what Koichi Tohei put on his book, The Arts of Self-Defense. And when I began Aikido, I did find the original newspaper article, or somebody had posted it online, and it said a new self-defense class was beginning. And so that's what we went to do. We went to learn self-defense. But over the years, I think how do we call it? It's not martial arts community, but for ours, the Aikido community has come to see, I hope, that it is not self-defense. It is, Aikido is budo. I hope they see it as budo.
What is the definition of budo?
That's a good question. Budo, it's a martial way. I guess Don Draeger best described it as a martial way, and he used the term bujutsu. Jutsu means art, as martial arts. I myself, when I do certain translations, do not use martial arts. I use budo or bujutsu when applicable. Bu has a profound meaning. It is not merely martial. I was just talking with someone today, and Bu, Shin Bu Fusatsu, the Bu of God does not kill. That's what was the topic of discussion. So the idea of Bu, actually the Japanese character, or Chinese, it's the same character, is to stop the halberd. So you could physically think of stopping an attack, or you can think of it as preventing an attack. And thought of that way, then what you do is you train in these lethal arts for the sake of not using them, preventing any kind of conflict.
What is your definition of self-defense?
Well, self-defense is to protect yourself and those who support you against aggression, which could be we tend to think of it in terms of physical actions against a physical aggression. That's the basis for them. If you must do some physical action against some physical aggression, I think if you can survey the situation where there is a threat and not go there, that would be the best self-defense. Yeah? Not being there is the best thing. I was once asked, what do you do against a knife? I said, stay far away. Like, how about a block? That's a good idea. I said, what about a gun? Oh, maybe 2 blocks. That's, but that's a little facetious, but that's about what it is. If you could observe there is a dangerous situation, and you are there alone, then you have subjected yourself to an attack. However, let's be realistic. Sometimes people attack you for no reason. Might be a crazy. You can't tell.
Well, the dictionary um, defines self-defense as the defense of one's person or interests, especially through the use of physical force, which is permitted in certain cases as an answer to a charge of violent crime.
That's a good definition, yeah.
Well, but I mean, Aikido in the past was a form of fighting art.
Yes, yes. There were, let's put it this way, there were specific combative skills in there capable of repelling a physical assault.
So if we define the word fighting as a noun, the action of fighting, violence, or conflict; as an adjective, displaying or engaging in violence, combat, or aggression.
I wouldn't call it fighting. I guess fighting in a broad sense, but if you are doing a physical response to aggression, it could be violent to the other person, but if you're fighting, that means you're getting hit upon yourself, being assaulted yourself. I think in terms of military force, they you're being shot at and you shoot back, and that is a form of defense. Um, However, in our case, which our topic here today is Aikido as self-defense, I think you would qualify, I suppose. I don't like this. It's using Aikido techniques as a response to an aggression. I guess you could call it fighting back, but I don't think it's fighting.
I don't know if you could consider Aikido a form of fighting. I think you could consider it a form of self-defense. Do you think it's self-defense?
It can be used for self-defense. Although what we have as, we call it Aikido, when it had achieved that title, or Sensei adopted that name, it was not a form of dealing with uh, an attack anymore. I see it that way because he was Sensei at the after in the post-war years, he declared uh, Aikido wa ai wa bu nari. Yeah, I what no it says bu wa ai nari. I'm sorry, I got it backwards. He started to describe Aikido with a love instead of the matching of I, and so that changed it. But bear in mind that Sensei was still the same guy inside. Yeah.
Should Aikido be considered when they talk about self-defense?
If you talk about self-defense as a means of repelling an attack, is that what we're saying, of protecting oneself by that definition that you gave earlier? No, I think what you see nowadays is Aikido is not, should not be considered that. It has taken itself out of that.
So then what is it?
Okay, so what is Aikido? Second Doshu Kishomaru Sensei, he made a film back in the 1970s, I believe it was. And at the opening, he's asked the question by the narrator, "What is Aikido?" And the Japanese gagaku, old music comes on. He goes, "Nihon no dentou to tomo ni sodatte kita bujutsu 土台として心身鍛錬であり." Yeah, so he described it as body was a tanden, fortification of the mind and body based on the traditional martial arts that have come down through Japanese culture. So Kishomaru Sensei's point of Aikido was tanden. And tanden is a difficult word to can't find an equivalent word to it, but it's the fortification or the strengthening of the mind and body. Shin, yeah, the mind and body. Um, and I see it that way. Uh, it's based on the traditional martial arts. Yeah. So it has that foundation where the training methods are, I believe, and what I experienced are the sweat and more sweat and pound and more pound.
I mean, the Japanese dictionary defines Tonren as toughening, disciplining, training.
Yes, there is that. Yes, yes, that's a good definite training. So it's a lot of like what we do for any sport. It's a repetition of certain skills. It is mental endurance because you may not enjoy it. You may not all the time. I mean, take anybody who plays American football. I mean, you don't want to do laps, but coach says do it, and you do it, and you find that there are benefits to taking a lap. You know? Doing certain drills to strengthen your body, strengthen your resolve, and I guess for me, if I look at any sports team that has a rigorous coaching program, the kids do better. The players do better in a competition. They have uh, not just physically as far as the score goes of winning, but should they not win, I think they better accept it because they know they did what they could do, and that's the strengthening of the mind and body. And in Aikido too, if we have to have the rigor, proper rigor, to call it budo, and that physical strengthening, if you think of it, extend that point, allows you to better, if you had to defend yourself with whatever techniques you have vigor, you have speed, you have strength, you have endurance, and let us say you are pushed around, you have your body has the strength to endure being pushed around.
But then isn't the training methods of Aikido, the things you would use in self-defense?
Yes, they are. It would be the if what you would need to defend yourself, yes. But I thought about this question when you asked me some weeks ago. Um, there is no in Japanese it's called Goshin Jitsu. Yeah, Goshin Jitsu. But you look around, there's no jutsu. There is no art called Goshin Jutsu. There is no specific. There's bujutsu. There's karate. There's judo. But these are again, you would have to have the training methods of the art and apply those to aggression because there is no art called self-defense.
But some of these old school early Aikidoists were very aggressive, would go out and start fights in Kabukicho.
Yes. So I've heard. So I've heard. I have no accurate, real documentation of it, but those are the stories out there.
But then that means they were engaging in a form of combat, fighting.
Well, yes. Um, these are some of the people we knew. Um, not all of them, though, that did that to get their training. Um, they they need it, I think, when you're early 20s and you're engaged in physical training, that hard to believe that what you're doing is effective. And so they did these things. They went out and I started fights, I suppose. And with the skills that they had, they could come out victoriously.
Do you think that Aikido has changed from a form of self-defense to a self-development tool or something like that?
Yeah, it has come to be more than self development or less than self development. I think it has come to be an enjoyable pastime. It seems to be an enjoyable pastime. Um,
I mean, Terry Dobson wrote that book, isn't it? It's a lot like dancing.
It's a lot like dancing, yeah, but the author of that book trained very hard, you know. Um, I think I see what I see in modern Aikido now. It's well, it's kind of like dance. Doesn't have the discipline of dance. Kind of looks like Aikido, but it doesn't have the rigor of Aikido. Um, it lacks a lot of the elements of makes what made Aikido budo.
What elements are those?
Um, Aikido has to do with it's a unique art I found. Um, it has its own category. Okay, there's kobudo and there's shinbudo. So kobudo, old style aikido or budo, or koryu as they call it also, deals with weaponry, a lot of it. Um, and when you're dealing with weapons, you have to be careful that no one gets hurt. I mean, cut or poked. And so you have to deal with kata. And the katas have to be uh, preserved. That's the part of the koryu. What they do is to preserve the old forms that were passed down to them. And those old forms, for example, kenjutsu or yari kata, they were done a certain way in which the practitioners could learn the attacks and the defenses, and they were done in a certain order so no one got stabbed or slashed. And that's koryu. That's how they do it. Specific kata, and they're long. I've seen jodo kata, and it takes a lot of remembering and a great deal of intensity. You're not just swinging it; you're actually swinging at someone's head, and they know it's coming, but they respond with the proper timing to parry or block or what have you. So that's koryu, and then we have shinbudo, which is karate do, aikido, judo, shorinji kempo, and things like that. Um, shorinji kempo has kata. It also has an interesting, what I've seen in demonstration, interesting. I guess it's kind of like what I wish we had in Aikido. These guys wear armor. It's really their own development, but the armor protects, has a plastic shield which gives way, so the person receiving a blow to the head does not absorb the force. Yeah, the force is absorbed by the equipment, not like the boxing masks we have. So um, in that way, it's again a kata, but the person doing the what we would call the nage portion can actually go and kick and punch at as would be an effective kick or punch. Judo has gone the way of shiai, and that is their training form, has been their training form, where both parties are interested in achieving the same goal. Both want to get out there and do the same waza. So if you and I were engaged in it, we're both looking for the same openings. We're both trying to engage with our favorite technique or counter each other's the other person's technique. Um, that's one form of engagement. There's kendo. Kendo has again the same thing. We're both parties face each other, and they both have the same skill, interested in achieving the same result. And Kendo wears all that bogu, the protective gear, so they can actually strike with the shinai. They can actually get in there. And that's a shiai-based thing. Now we come to Aikido. Well, we have nage and uke, but normal practice, uke is not trying to get a hold of the other one. to engage in a throw. It has come to be presenting the attack and allowing nage to perform the waza. And so what's happened today is, as that song goes, it's all about the throw, just a throw, nothing but the throw. It's all about the throw, and there's no emphasis put on being an uke. And uke has being an uke, and people think of it as ukemi, as how to fall. Yeah, well, that's part of it, but that isn't the whole story. Because in Aikido is unique in that we have that structure, that promise practice where I will come in with the shomen uchi, for example, and it's yakusoku geiko. It's promise practice. I will strike you with the shomen rather than come in and kick you in the groin. It's not going to do that. We say we're going to do shomen uchi, so I come in shomen uchi. That's the practice. If we get to a higher level, there are people I've met who says, "Come at me with what you want," and they will deal with you. It could be aggressive. You could very well suffer a bruise on your shin if you tried to kick them in the groin.
But I mean, should Aikido enter into Shiai or wear some type of protective gear so that the Nage and the Uke can engage in combat?
I would, and in my dojo, in our practice, we occasionally engage in protective gear. Yeah, not severe. We don't go at it like those. Haven't developed it to the point of where Shorinji Kempo has it, but by wearing some headgear, Nage feels safer about throwing an atemi. Yeah, and the body protection we have is you can feel safe that you're not going to hurt your partner. And the partner attacking, the one who's the uke, isn't afraid of being injured because you have a great opening when you strike. When you attack, you have openings. You can't protect yourself because you have focused all of your attention on the strike. So perhaps that, but the other part of your question was, should we engage in Shiai? It's kind of hard.
So like that's why we're getting close to this idea of that maybe because the intensity of Aikido is not there, the rigor of Aikido is not there anymore. You have to introduce something like competition in order to, make everyone attack and throw on the up and up. Everyone's giving it their best because that brings that reality to the training.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't. I'm not really in favor of that kind of I think during regular training, if you have the mindset and you know how to perform the attack, the technique can be done safely and with sufficient vigor and rigor. Yeah. For example, if I'm doing shomen uchi, I'm not just going to walk in and hit you because you could walk in and hit me too. This is the budo concept. I if I'm going to engage as the uke, the nage will also be willing to engage. I just remarked to someone, I said, yeah, if you can kamae, you can run away. If you got time enough to do that, you can get out, duck out. But sometimes that isn't the case in martial scenario. In our case, it's not we train in the arts as one who faces the opponent and knows the attack is coming. That's the way our Aikido techniques are set up. So based on that, if I am going to engage someone, then if there's no time limit, then I will slowly edge my way in to close the eye and look for an opening. And when there is an opening, then I will strike at the same time, keeping my guards up so that the person who is the nage doesn't come and hit me first. Because that is, in my thinking, that's an Aikido technique. If I'm facing you and I have an opening and I don't engage right away, or my breathing shows, and you come in and drop me down, that's a technique. That's, in fact, that's number one in Budo Denshu.
So I guess, is it safe to say that Aikido, can you say that Aikido is kind of a spectrum where down here they could do it as a form of Goshin Jutsu or self defense, but up here it's really more like Tanren self development?
Well, I look at Aikido in this 21st century, and yes, you could look at it like being very base and doing these self-defense defensive techniques, yeah, which if you do an Aikido technique as a short-term learning curve, it would require strength, it would require aggressiveness, and possibly those engaging in it could suffer injury. Possibly, I think if you make it, well, yeah, that way. The other way, tanden, you can have, there's more rigor, there's more moving around, and it's more disciplined, which is what I believe is the ideal Aikido.
But like, isn't, when you think about like Aikido and a person who engages in self defense, one of the main things that's the difference is aggression. If you engage in Aikido as Tanren or as a Do, there's no aggression. But if you engage in Aikido with aggression, that's Goshin Jutsu, that's Aiki Budo, Aiki Jujitsu.
I think if you're doing Aikido, you it's not. I don't think it's aggression, but you have the verve, the vitality to attack, and Aikido or Budo, you have to have not have to, but the ideal to make it Budo is you have what is called Muga Mushin. You have to be egoless. When I strike you, it's not to hurt you. I am merely striking you. If I have a sword and I'm going to cut shomen, or tegatana and I'm cutting shomen, the only thing I have in mind is to cut shomen. Yeah, it's not to hurt you. It's just to put that hand or sword wherever it belongs. It's going to go. And if you should happen to be there and it cuts you in half, then that's what happens. It's not to hurt you. It's not. It that would be my view of what is aggression. You know, and that's the vigor that's necessary. There's no mal what's called malevolent feeling to do that.
But is it wrong to pursue Aikido from the standpoint of fighting or self defense? I mean, it's short sighted, but
Yeah.
is it wrong?
No, I think if you're what we used to talk about back then when I used to be at Hombu Dojo was you had to have the fighting spirit, and Japanese in general talked about the fighting spirit. And the fighting spirit is it's a do or die situation that you put yourself into. So Keiko is a very controlled. I looked at it role playing, if you would, yeah, where you really try to hit someone, put that out, and the other person would respond as if their life depended on it. I remember training with some women, and of course, we don't turn up the steam full, but the mental attitude is, I'm going to hit you. Yeah. And so what the partner receives is, this guy's, I can feel he's going to hit me. And so with that controlled movement, we engage in the technique. And of course, it is not meant to hurt someone, but I do have that mental intent that I will strike, not just put up my hand so she can throw me. I'm actually, and I have struck women, not hard, but they were hit because the blow came down in that direction. So I think that would be I would consider that the vigor, and that's the fighting spirit. And you have to fight back in the sense that sometimes when I am pinned, I don't take it. I try to wiggle out because that's the spirit of a fight in that sense.
So should you engage in training with a fighting spirit and not be a willing participant?
Yeah, you are in this engagement. We like to think of ourselves as being. I like to think of it as having been compromised into doing it. Yeah, having to use the skills that I have, and so that doesn't really you don't think about it, just do the arts. But the fighting spirit is you are being threatened and you have to fight back with your spirit, not just go through a dance motion. It's different. You are engaged in a martial action.
But isn't that self-defense?
Well, I think the word self-defense is am I defending myself? Yeah, I suppose you could call it. You could extend it to that. I think I think too of something what I've seen about European fencing, yeah, the sword arts, they're fighting arts. They're um aggressive moves. You have to have an aggressive move. But is it defending yourself? Or somebody comes to hit you with a blade, then I guess you are defending yourself. I suppose. I could go along with that, yeah.
Well, but then that leads us back to this idea that when people think about Aikido, they think about it as being fake or not effective.
Mm. Yes.
So then it doesn't flow along the spirit of self-defense.
Well, as we were talking earlier, I've looked at Aikido and there's a spectrum. We have a spectrum of what can be considered Aikido. It's not for me to judge, although I do it on my own, to this is Aikido and that's not Aikido. However, there is this form of Aikido that does not observe those martial criteria, shall we say? The martial criteria that
What form of Aikido is that?
well, that flowy, glowy, no touch, be nice Kido, 21st century Aikido, the art of peace Aikido, that sort of thing. Yeah, people think that this flowing around and being nice to folks on the mat is the art of peace, whereas the art of peace is you come with aggression, you're proposing non-peace, and I will do something to maintain or restore the peace, my peace at least. And so if you're just dancing around without an attack, then that's not budo. Budo has to have the attack because that's what it's based on.
How hard should you attack your opponent?
How hard should you attack? As they can handle. If you're a senpai, if you are in control of the situation, you will attack with as much vigor, as much intensity as you gauge the other person can handle, that they can deal with.
Why is it necessary to have a certain level of rigor or vigor?
Well, if you don't have that, then how is the other person supposed to learn? So Aikido in whatever form we have, has to have a cooperative nature. Even in well, it's different now from the old days before my time was. The other time was old days where you came in and you were subjected to a certain level of training, and if you couldn't deal with that minimal level, then you kind of lost heart and left the dojo. My first experience at Hombu Dojo is I was thrown into the mat, grabbed by the neck, and thrown down again. And this happened for about 10 minutes, and I couldn't handle that. So I explained to my nage, I say, I can't do it like this. Can you take it easy? So he took it easy. And I was able to continue training for many, many years. But had I been subjected to that intensity that that person had all for the entire hour, I think I would have not continued. So there's no training involved here. There's nothing learned here. If you're dealing with, let's say you have someone smaller in stature and strength and skill, um, and you start to come out with that intensity, that's considered bullying.
But did the old days think of it as tempering? You hit the metal to temper it. You hit their body against the mat to temper it.
Well, even with tempering, there's a certain force which you hammer the steel. Yeah, you can't just have a big old machine press come and hit it. You have to hit it with the right amount of force that the metal will conform to what it must do. You can't just go and beat the heck out of it. It's not beating it up. It's forging. So in that forging concept, you have to have the proper heat, the proper intensity. Otherwise, you just ruin whatever it is you're working with.
Can't you just tell them, "Hey, man, you got to do it like this"?
Well, yeah, you could. Um,
Why do you got to beat it into them or beat it out of them?
well, if that were the case, we'd all be experts. You just tell me what's in I have to do, and I would be an expert. That's doesn't work like that. The brain, although it's supposed to be all the same physical unit. The brain doesn't know that much. It's physical training. It's the body that learns it. So what you are doing is the mental rigor to keep going and doing this training, and the physical training that the body will respond. It'll have its own intelligence, if you want to put it that way, to handle it, because it is physical conditioning at one point, right? The way it is, yeah.
But then all that physical conditioning, isn't it supposed to be, or can it be used for self-defense?
I think it can. I think um, if you're physically strong, you can deal with the physical aggression better. Of course, you have more vigor.
That it can be used for self-defense.
In that sense, it would be self-defense. If you have, if you're, well, let's take that to a point. Then, let's say somebody comes to push you around, and you're able to tuck and roll pretty well. So they push you, and you go down, and you spin around, and get back up. Say, come on, pal. They hit you, and you put your arms in front of your head, and you can take it because you have strength in your arms and body. Yeah, you do defend yourself. You could think of it that way. But as far as getting back and doing something to the guy who comes at you, I don't know.
Well, should the Aikido training develop a certain skill set that can then be extrapolated into self-defense?
What you ideally want in Aikido training are those techniques that are effective. Otherwise, if you do this technique even if you have the wherewithal to try to respond to it, if your techniques are not correct or strong enough, then you will not be going to get knocked on your butt. You're going to be very surprised if you throw a punch and you find out you don't know how to punch.
Well, I wouldn't say like a punch, like punching people or kicking people. Those are specific skill
Yeah.
sets. But in terms of like shomanichi being used for, you know, a right cross punch, punch, and then you extrapolate shomanichi into that, defense against a overhead right.
Well, showman, which is an interesting thing to bring up because it's kind of hard to hurt somebody with a showman uchi. But I figured that this was done because the original people that used this aikijujutsu were swordsmen. And this was the power that they had. They had the strength to strike down. Their muscles were trained to do this. And what you have with a shomen uchi ikyu is actually a shomen strike without a sword, I think. But if you were to put a stick in their hands, it would be a different story. But I've also found that if you want to engage in a what shall I say, an overhead strike, then the posture of shomen uchi, like you would hold a sword, doesn't work. You can't get any power because you can't get your hip in there.
But there are these people that when they drop their shomanuchi, like Watanabe Shihan in the old days, when he would drop his shomanuchi on someone's forehead,
Yeah.
he would knock them down.
Oh yeah.
But you got to remember at that, when in the early 2000s, late 90s, he was so strong in Yaido that his overhead shomanuchi would just go bam and then knock you down. When he did yonkyo on you and squeezed your wrist with his strong hands, you automatically got a bruise.
Yeah. Well,
But people today aren't that diligent in their training.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's, right now he's what, Godan in Yaido, but when he was in the 90s, his overhead shomanuchi strike was so strong that when he hit you on the forehead,
Yeah.
he dropped you.
He trains with sword every day, doesn't he?
Yeah.
There you go. And he's a big person too. Yeah, that would kind of be an unusual case. I suppose maybe I have to rethink about shomen uchi. Although I feel like if I were to, I wouldn't do that to anybody. I could.
Well, no, like in the old days of boxing, haymakers, coming over the top was a no-no.
Yeah.
And shomanuchi is kind of like coming from that haymaker trajectory. But that the whole idea is that if someone came up to you and tried to accost you and they weren't a trained martial artist, and then you moved in shomanuchi or you moved in with a haymaker, you could drop them with that shot. If you were highly trained.
If we were trained in,
And they were not trained.
yeah, if you were trained to doing shomen uchi, I've also thought, because we have no instruction on this, there is no book written on it or passed down knowledge. Well, it's kind of passed down. But one of my senpai, way back when in the 70s, they said, yeah, you hit shomen and then you give him a flip. And
But would that be uchidasu?
maybe that's uchidasu. I haven't associated.
So you hit him and then you push him back?
Could be that one. Could be. Let me experiment with that. That's a good point. Could be what, because uchidasu is to launch. Yeah, I can't find an equivalent word, but it strike out, and there's no description of how to do it. I don't have any instruction of how to do uchidasu.
Because like if you think about the book that you're working on, Budo Renshu, you were talking about how the atemi is not just a punch him in the face, but it's part of the throw. It's part of the technique.
Yeah. Well, there is I come to see that there is atemi, and there's also a finishing move. Atemi is not a finishing move; it's a preliminary movement to distract and disrupt. But there are techniques in Budo Denshu would finish up with a thrust to the ribs, and that's the end of it. So you would have to do something to the guy's ribs.
Well, I mean, because in the old days of martial arts or even Aikido,
Yeah.
you can't let them get back up. You
Yeah.
can't let them, like there was this moment, one of my senpai in the 90s, a guy attacked him when they were playing basketball.
Yeah.
This guy attacked him
Mm.
and he did seonage. Blam!
Oh,
Dropped the guy, boom, no problem. The guy got back up, dusted himself off, and my buddy was like, I just smashed this guy with seonage.
Yeah.
And he's coming back for more. And then that right there, he didn't know what to do because he had got the shot off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the thing is, he didn't use the finishing move.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just you throw him, in the old days, you threw him seonage, you tilted it so that their head hit the concrete.
Yeah.
And then you would do some type of finishing move.
Yeah, so the finishing would be something like maybe a submission, newaza on him, or something else would happen. Yeah, that's a good point. There's no finishing move.
Well,
Yeah,
a lot of the
so-
finishing moves have been taken out of Aikido.
Well, yeah. Well, take a look at kotegaeshi. We were told back when, the way I learned it is, it's nage katame waza. You have to do the katame. You always finish kotegaeshi with the osaya technique. And it was kind of a standard, looked like Nikkyo technique that you finished with. But that was required. And if you did that on an examination, you threw and then you pinned. My teacher, Fujita Masatake Sensei, said everything is a pin. Shihonage is a pin. And I think the Yoshinkan people still do that. Iriminage is a pin. I thought, okay. All of it has to pin. You have to pin the guy to the ground, or have some kind of severe knockdown technique, but don't rely on it.
But why are the pins or the finishing moves not taught anymore?
I wish I could answer that. I think because it I don't know, maybe it interferes with them getting on to the next throwing technique and interferes with their flow. They want to do the biff bam kind of Aikido. That seems to be popular nowadays.
Did Aikikai or some higher up purposely take out the finishing move or the devastating aspects of it?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It was decided that they weren't going to do that anymore, and kotegaeshi would just be a throwing technique. There are times when kotegaeshi is just throwing. I think O Sensei in his embu, he would do kotegaeshi and just toss away, but that's embu. Yeah. Iriminage too, he did not do a pin. It was a repetition. It was a one throw after the next. So that's embu. But if you are doing training, then you do want to pin. That's your the completion of your technique. I think that's and that's the way you should. If you had to do it, those skills will come out. Those habits will come out. Whereas embu, we don't do it all the time, so I don't think you're just going to toss somebody away.
Because like on Shihonage, you could bump, the old time, they would bump the hip as they went under, but then they would get that person riding on their shoulder and then they would just drive their head into the ground. But you can't do that today. For one, it's impolite to bump them. But two, you do that to someone, I mean, you could kill them.
Yeah. There is a shihonage I have heard about, I was told about, but we never dared to do it because even if you just tried to do it, you might get it right and you could injure your partner. And this one had to do with when you have that arm curled, you do this, and so their elbow goes way up and they fish upwards, and then you would drop them. And this one you would land on your neck or your head. And we were told about this, and we were cautioned, don't do it. And if you imagine what could happen, it somehow your partner could get that sweet spot and get you up there. But once you're coming down, there's nothing they can do to protect you because your whole weight's coming down this way.
So, but then because we don't do it that way, you could still do it that way, but then it would be a self-defense or fighting art.
Yeah, well, you could do it that way. You could tell people you can do it, and you could get to load that position, perhaps, yeah, and come down. However, the shihonage, that seems to be the way that was done back in the 1930s, is the hand goes not out here, not here, not here, but behind onto the spine. And so in dropping someone that way, they fall down onto their side. So the shihonage was the person lands on their side, and you have the hand into their spine and lock them up there. And I see sometimes the Yoshinkan people do this technique, this press. Some old Aikikai guys still do this, where they will have you landing on your side. But the sabaki to get there, the movement to get there is not the one that we do normally.
Is
A
it
different sabaki.
but is it not there because you would never leave? It's effective, it's a fighting art, it's a form of self-defense. It works, so you would never leave. Become a better person. Why?
Yeah.
I already got this.
Yeah.
I'll be a better person when I get home with all my arms and legs intact.
Yeah.
And then, you have to take it away, those things, so that people don't flourish there.
The Aikido that I first learned, getting back to that, this is shihonage, since we're on that topic, was terribly inefficient, but safe. We never got hurt in shihonage. We never did. In fact, we didn't get hurt at all. But if you train somebody to do that style, like I said, put the hand into the center of the back, it's not that easy to learn that. It's a rather difficult skill, but that is the art of shihonage.
So why can't, or is it wrong, or why is it not a good idea to think of Aikido as a form of self-defense?
It's kind of short-sighted.
Well, because if you ask Chiba Sensei or Shibata Sensei back in the 70s when you're there, hey, is this self-defense? What do you think they would say?
I believe I had asked it. I don't know, but I know Chiba Sensei once told me, he said it can be used as self-defense. It can be. You can use these as self-defense. Your Shibata Sensei too. He says his thing was, this is not self-defense. This is budo. This is budo, and because it's a do, it is your life path. And that's what you do.
And that you shouldn't be killing people or hurting people?
No, that's not the point. A budo can very well cause serious injury to someone. I think if you were to use, if you're doing Aikido as self-defense, your movements, you're going to do other movements besides just the stuff you learn in the dojo. I think you would do a certain ateme, just naturally. Not naturally, but
foot sweeps.
Huh?
Foot sweeps.
Foot sweep, if you could, but you have to be aware of those things when you're training. You look at them, you go, yeah, I could do this, I could do that, and just kind of fiddle around with that. But in a normal practice situation, and you would practice safely, which means nothing outside of the what the technique requires, unless, of course, you and your partner have some kind of understanding and sufficient skills to do it. So funny, one night we're doing one of the budo renshu techniques, and my student says, "Hey, what about this?" And he swept my foot out. I said, "That was good." And I never thought of that. He said, instead of dropping your foot back, just move it. And I said, yeah, that's it. So we put that down in our notebook. And they say, yeah, that could definitely be an option, definite option. So if let's say if someone is you have to use it, it's not if you have to use, let's say, Aikido technique, whatever it happens to be, you don't know how the person will come at you, and you don't know how close or far the ma'ai will be, and you don't know the exact angle that it's going to be, but you will make adjustment based on your training, and you could use it as self-defense. So you're applying not yokome uchi shiho nage, but a form of shiho nage to whatever comes at you.
But then Aikido is so much more than a form of self-defense or an art of fighting.
Yeah, it's more than that, because if it were just the art of fighting, it's kind of boring, huh? It has its limitations. If you look at Aikido as a budo, then you have a greater platform on which to continue your training. Is that the way to put it? Yeah, I think because Aikido or Budo, any kind of training like this is not just the physical training, it's the mental training, it's the things like people do. They go into the icy stream and deal with that, or they run in the snow, or they'll very popular is Kangeiko, and you practice for 10 days straight in cold weather. It's not freezing cold, but you do it, and your body gets tired of training after about a week, but you continue on to do. They chose 10 because it's about where your body gets tired of it, and you can do it during summer, of course, with caution. But these are rigors that you mental and physical rigors. And then there is intellectual training, where you study other things besides well, the arts of Aikido too, but you know, in this case, the Japanese history, Buddhism. mm, I like to read about I like hero stories, so I read about the famous generals and famous battles, and watch, Seven Samurai and things like this. And that's the kind of mm, intellectual training you get. And then, uh, in addition to that, you write your own essays for yourself, and that becomes a form of mental training or academic training. You might want to engage in Zen, and you go and do that. I'm not saying you know how long you should do that, but it's one form. Um, you can think of it as, oh, I should do social work, and that becomes part of your training, where you give of yourself without any thought of reward. Being a parent is great training. You learn a lot of patience, as many of us know. So it's moral training, intellectual training, physical training. All these aspects are part of your Budo training. And I think for my own self, I learning to read more and more Japanese and understand more and more of it. Uh, I see that as what's kept me going all these years. If you just physically train, it's no fun.
Because you think about like this, how empty and short-sighted and limiting Aikido is as just a form of fighting. That it's so much more. It can influence your life, like you were saying.
Yeah, yeah. So if you just think of it as defending yourself, you go, well, then you find out that there isn't much of it. That kind of stuff doesn't happen all that often. And yeah, I have not been accosted lately. So, but when I was working, you sure got bullied around by the administration. So you got to learn how to deal with that in the best way you can. And I would think about it. The powers that were had the power, and rather than just going on head on against it, that isn't going to work. So you have to figure, how do you maneuver, and how do you maintain your ground, and Aikido in an abstract, or budo in an abstract situation. And I thought, well, that's where the budo training comes in. Yeah.
And maybe that's why they say the sharpest swords are the ones that are kept in their sheaths.
Yeah, well, the sharpest swords, yeah, well, any sword should be kept in its sheath, yeah, I think, because once it's drawn, you got to do business with it, yeah. It, yeah, that's a good example, but it's you're training to sharpen your skills, your mental, physical, emotional skills, much as if you would sharpen a bladed weapon. And once you have that bladed weapon, you keep it in a sheath. You would draw it out to practice how to use it, of course, but you would not draw it out against someone. If you draw it against someone, then it better well do its business. You don't threaten somebody with a drawn sword. Yeah. You threaten them with or defend with words. And someone told me, said, in the old Edo period, if samurai put his hand to his sword, that was stage one. You were already meaning to draw, and your hand should be kept out in front. But if you put your hand to your saya, that was stage one. If you push the tsuba, stage two, and they could kill you. That was as good as a draw. That's how serious it was.
Yeah, because I think it's 1/8 or 1/4 of the blade is drawn is
Yeah.
considered drawn.
Yeah, that's a good way to, but the other person looking at you doesn't see that, but you just, can that maybe that sense, but putting your hand there is already a threat. Yeah. It's drawn. Well, it's not drawn yet, but still, yeah, you don't have to pull it out of its sheath to be considered drawn in that sense. I think. Well, anyway, getting back to this thing, you keep it in there unless you really, really have to use it. In which case, it is use it. Yeah, would you have to expend all avenues, all courses not to draw. That movie, Tasogare Samurai. Yeah, that Twilight Samurai. It's a real good example. He duels with a wooden sword, and he beats the other fellow, and he doesn't kill him. But when he does have to go after this brigand in a house, he actually has to take a live blade in there, and it's a traumatic experience. Yeah, because he has to kill the person. Can't just knock him out. He has to kill this other guy.
So then Aikido can be thought of as the sheath, which, houses you who has the ability to defend themselves.
Yeah, so you want to strengthen your Aikido to the point where it is as best as you can, as lethal as you can. If I may use the word lethality, effective. It has to be as effective as you can get it, and not to use it. Because when you use it, you might be unhappy with the results. If you can talk somebody down and get out of an engagement, a verbal encounter, then that's good. Then you both walk away. You both go home. But should it come to the point where you did not do your best to talk down the situation, and it should have escalated, and you have these skills, you could very well damage the other person, or you yourself could be damaged because you chose to engage in a physical confrontation. If, on the other hand, like we're talking, if you were accosted, yeah, then you do what you can with as much lethal or non-lethal force as you can employ. Kishimaru Doshu once said, to get to that point where you can have your opponent's life in the palm of your hand requires a severe amount of tanren, a severe amount of training. So those that can do that have, we have known people who could just spin us around, but they had tremendous amount of practice prior to that. I don't think if you approach Aikido as self-defense, well, okay, that's a way to get into it. But if you keep trying to maintain that, I think you get kind of bored with it. But what will happen, I believe, if you engage in Aikido practice, and you'll find that it's quite rewarding, it's quite enjoyable, even with all the sweats and bumps and bruises you may get. It's if you find it enjoyable, please, by all means, continue. I've enjoyed it. So have you.
Well, I guess Aikido is what you make of it. On the spectrum, it could be a self-defense tool and something you employ in fighting, or it could be something which develops you and becomes the restraint that you have as a human being not to do something dehumanizing to another person. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for talking to me about it. And don't forget to like or subscribe to this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.